So welcome to this third and final session in our lab about writing support, and especially the tools that we can use to support students writing. So some of you were there before, but I always like to do a little bit of a, going around the table to introduce ourselves briefly. And there were new people, including, well, Tim had participated, but I think we didn't hear you much before, and same thing for Mary. Nick, I'm glad you could join us because scheduling was a little bit difficult, and I hope we can talk about some of your tools. But maybe we can start by the order that I see here. Gabe, if you can introduce yourself just a little bit.
Sure. Hi, I'm the Humanities Department Coordinator at Champlain College, Saint-Lambert, and I'm also the developer of a platform for writing across different campuses to allow my students to engage with students and with students at different places. So I sort of have those two hats.
Yeah. So the platform being called News Activist.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, it's called News Activist. It's at newsactivist.com. It's free and accessible to any and all teachers and students who are interested in that kind of collaborative writing activity.
Absolutely. And Norm had talked a little bit about it during the first lab, and so it's pretty useful, and we'll talk about it more today, I hope. James?
Urukun plagiarism detection. I'm here as a salesperson for Urukun, but also as a former teacher of English as a second language. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick?
Yeah, hi there. Can you see me?
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so my name is Nicholas Walker. Call me Nick. I work at Hunsick College in Montreal. I teach English as a second language. And in my spare time, I develop a variety of web tools for my students and for teachers. And I wasn't able to attend, but if you saw the first lab, then you will have seen my new website, correctivefeedback.com, which I will be presenting at Rascals June 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, well, I'll also go to Rascals this time to actually talk about this lab, to kind of do a summary and also to kind of follow up on this a little bit. Mary?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Johnson. I teach in the Early Childhood Education Department at Vanier College. But right now I'm part of a committee that we're calling LCAD at Vanier, Literacy and Communication Across the Disciplines. And so our job is to help teachers find different ways to help their students with those 4 literacy skills of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I have been learning a lot about all these different tools that you guys seem to know so much more about than I do. I've never used any of these tools, so it's been really interesting for me, and I look forward to trying some of them out.
Oh, excellent. Norm?
Let's see. Am I
Yep.
am I coming
We don't
across?
see.
Great. You will now.
Yeah.
All right. So can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Norm Spatz. I used to be the English correspondent at ProfWeb. I'm retired. I'm on the board at Vanier as a parent representative. And I'm really here because I've been working with Gabe on a project where we're using News Activist, and I'm discovering it in much greater detail actually than when I used it as a teacher. I'm discovering it from a number of positions. I sort of have been doing a sandbox and playing around with it and realizing just how much work goes into these platforms for them to work well once the teacher gets it. It's really quite fascinating to see the other side, the dark side of writing platforms.
Yeah, it can be a bright side too, but it can be pretty involved and so on. Yeah. Roberta?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Currently, I'm the project coordinator for Chantier 3 Universal Design for Learning project across 4 Cegeps and McGill, as well as I'm a course instructor in inclusive education at McGill and special care counseling at LaSalle College. And I work, one of the courses I teach is in assistive technology.
Nice.
Thanks.
Tim? I know we could hear you earlier, so it should work. Are you muted? We don't hear you yet. I don't know if you're talking. Maybe we can go to Wilma, please. I see that both of you have your microphones muted. So.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, there we go. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Okay, so I work at Vanier. I work in the Pedagogical Development Office, and we support the LCAD project that Mary was mentioning. My specific role is supporting teachers who have students with special needs, and I also teach in the special care counseling department.
Mm-hmm. Wilma? I don't know if you have a microphone that's working or something. Otherwise, we might come back a little bit later. Yeah, go ahead. We don't hear yet. I'm guessing you can hear us, just in case.
So I'm in the same office as Wilma. She can hear. We're trying to figure out her microphone.
Okay, maybe we can try that again later. That's fine. And very strong showing from Vanier, so thank you for that, including from the same office. That's pretty nice too. And speaking of Vanier, I got some feedback about our very first lab session 2 months ago from Kevin Linton, who teaches physics over there. And one thing that I find pretty interesting is that I know that for many of you, as especially English teachers, much of what we're talking about might be, some maybe obvious or something like that, or not unusual at least. But for Kevin, it was, according to him, and I think he wanted to write something in the collaborative document about this. But James, is there a problem? I saw a reaction. Okay. But he was talking about the fact that it really helped him think about his teaching in a different way, which is exactly what I wanted us to do. So the lab is not specifically for language teachers, but obviously language teachers are the experts who we can tap to discuss these issues. But to get people to gain some insight from language teaching, to understand that basically even grading lab reports, it's about language somehow. It's about providing support and providing feedback and so on for the learning process to happen. A lot of what happens in the disciplines is part of that. And actually, hello? Wilma.
Yes, hello, sorry.
Not a problem. You can introduce yourself.
Okay, so Wilma Brown from Vanier College, also in the same office with Tim Comerford in the Pedagogical Development Office. So yes, we are very interested in supporting writing across the curriculum. Along with Mary, we're working on all kinds of things to help teachers be encouraged to make sure that all of the literacy skills, but also writing is included in all courses. So glad to be here.
And actually, either you or Mary, if you could talk a little bit about this across the discipline part, how easy it is to get people from different disciplines to get involved, or if there are specific issues that are interesting to think about.
I'll start, and Mary, you can certainly add. We have a policy at the college that we are revising at the moment, which is student proficiency in the language of instruction. And in there, we are stipulating that all take-home written work as well as oral presentations must have a minimum of 10% attributed, 10% of the mark attributed for literacy and language skills. So that is what we have at the moment. And so the policy is not yet in effect. We are hoping that it will be in effect for the fall semester, and that it will be that we will be supporting teachers to help that happen. We have marking rubrics for both oral presentations as well as written work, suggestions of how people could mark this, because people aren't always comfortable with necessarily marking the language, the written language.
Absolutely. Mary?
Just to add a little bit onto what Willie was saying, it's been very interesting to get feedback from all the different departments at the college. The proposed policy was sent out for a community-wide review, and it's been really great to get all the different departments chiming in terms of how easy it is and how much interest we found. Everybody's pretty interested in the whole idea, how easy it's going to be to get everybody to come on board and put their focus, at least in part, in their courses onto reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We'll see. That's a work in progress. We were joking the other day that the LCAD committee is going to descend on different departments like paratroopers coming down in parachutes and to try and get people fired up about this idea that, as you just said, I wrote it down, it's all about language somehow when we are looking at student work. So I think that's our job. That's what we're looking at in the coming weeks and months with this committee.
Nice, yeah. And are the teachers in different disciplines, are they a little bit reluctant? How did they react so far?
Well, so we have two kinds of interest so far. We have very positive interest and we have quite reluctant interest as well. Everybody's engaged with the topic, but not everybody is sure how to do it. Not everybody is convinced that they should have to do it. And a lot of people are worried that they are not competent to do things like grading students' writing. So that's why looking at some of these tools is really interesting for us. I don't think it would ever replace the individual teacher and their own input, but looking at ways to support teachers so that they can feel more comfortable, so they can feel supported, I think is a really important part of what we are going to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Teachers tend to react very strongly if they don't feel supported, but if they feel supported, I think there's something that can be done. Yeah. Gabe?
Yeah. Am I muted or you can hear me?
Nope. We can.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the humanities department about 3 years ago, there was a push coordinated by the humanities and English department at Champlain Saint-Lambert to generate a writer's writing across the discipline handbook, which ended up being called the Writer's Toolkit. Mm-hmm. The idea was that all students on arriving to the college would, depending on program, get a specific toolkit with sections for, if you're a science student, writing, and it might have a sample of a lab report. But that whether you're in creative arts or social sciences or sciences, a big chunk of the toolkit would be shared across any program. So the general ed departments, for example, that's in any program. Maybe, Mary, it would be interesting if you wanted to, this particular toolkit, which is now an object, it's an actual book that every student gets at Champlain, and it includes from each discipline certain samples of writing, and the idea that writing a lab report is something as a humanities teacher I can't speak to, but it's good for me to see what that department that generates that style of writing puts down as a sample and gives in terms of instruction, so that at the college we all have a more well-rounded sense of what writing is happening in the different disciplines. Mm-hmm. So there's a particular person who's in both English and humanities who it might be interesting to get in touch with. It might be useful just to see something. I wanted to mention that just because over the last 3 or 4 years, that writing across the disciplines piece has been, we've had a committee at the college. Each department has been solicited about contributing their different section, and it has it has gotten to the point where it is now recommended on all kinds of course outlines, and so that almost every student has this particular document, and the idea to build that awareness of what the writing that happens in the different disciplines.
Yeah, and speaking of the support across disciplines, Roberta, I know that you work with people in different disciplines, obviously, and I think the part from McGill would be also useful. Anything to add about this?
Are you meaning related to writing at McGill per se?
Yeah.
I haven't actually heard too much. I've heard more from the Cegeps actually.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, just in actually the need for something like both what Vanier and Champlain, both of your Cegeps are describing that you've done. Just in that the level of writing ability and it leads a bit to be desired from a majority of the students. And I know at LaSalle College, we also have, we can grade up to 10% of the mark can be allocated to writing.
Yeah. And part of the reason I was talking about McGill, I don't know if anyone has seen this from McGill, the writing center, Roots of Writing. Had you seen it before, Roberta? Yeah.
No, I haven't. No, I know there's a writing center, but I haven't seen Roots of Writing. I'll have to check that out.
So Carolyn Samuel, who was participating in the lab before, had sent a link to this. And what I find interesting is that it's very specifically people from different disciplines who are showing some of their writing or talking about their own writing, including someone from architecture, someone from anthropology, actually a friend of mine, Andrew Kostopoulos. So I think it's pretty useful to have examples. I think it's one of the main points that we need to make is that different disciplines have different ways to write, and it's pretty important to be able to emulate that style of writing within the discipline to then be able to learn more in that specific discipline. Yeah. And actually, James, I was wondering, since you have a perspective that's pretty international, do you notice trends in terms of what might be writing across the disciplines and the kind of levels of writing and what helps in literacy and so on? Broad question, but
very broad. In my capacity as in Örekund, I must say I don't have that experience. In my previous position as the head of English in a school, though, we had a policy of trying to encourage cross-curricular cooperation. We had half our instruction taught in English. And we tried very much to have teachers from different subjects show the level of language to English teachers to help grade and ascertain the levels of the ability of students. And of course, as English was taught, when English as a language was taught using other methods, we would occasionally show an essay that had some link to the historical subject, for example, to the history teachers, to help them get a better understanding of the student's ability to understand historical events and so on and so forth. So we work very, very much between the subjects rather than just purely on history, purely on English, and that was very good. Although I'm not going to sugarcoat it or lie, it was an increase of work which was not well received by absolutely everyone all the time. There it is, just cards on the table. There you go.
Yeah, I think part of the point, it can be a hard sell to say, oh, you now need to grade the language kind of thing. If teachers are not used to it. But if it's about improving something, improving the learning process, I think it can help a lot. And I think it's a good segue into corrective feedback, Nick Walker's software and a platform for this. Would you like to talk a little bit about this, Nick?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. So I teach English as a second language, and often amongst my colleagues and other English second language teachers at other Cegeps, the preoccupation has been to get students to write academic type texts. Now, for you at Vanier and other English language schools, this is a high priority and very important. I believe for the lower levels, the highest priority is to get them to write sentences that make sense, to get their verbs to agree, to develop some range and some fluency in their writing and speaking. So what I've been focusing on more than anything is to get students to write narratives. And this is because narratives have shorter clause structures, greater range of verbs, and a greater range really of conversational type English. And we know that when students have conversational English emphasized in their language, their English second language courses, they develop greater confidence in their speaking ability when they speak to English first language speakers on the street, which allows them to develop a greater sense of integrativeness. They want to participate in the target culture and develop their skills further in the language. So in order, therefore, to facilitate and to help teachers help their students develop their conversational ability and their narrative writing, we need to get students to write greater volumes of text than just these simple 5-paragraph argumentative essays, and get them to write, regularly and a range of different types of styles. And in order to do that, teachers will have to collect the writing and give some sort of feedback. Giving feedback, however, just is so time-consuming and such hard work for us. I mean, it's difficult for me to emphasize just how much time we spend poring over students' texts and then filling them full of reading, giving them back, and only to discover that the student gives it a cursory glance and puts it in their bag and never to retrieve it again. Now, there are tricks we can, use to insist that students revise. But even then, just the effect of correcting students' text on their language acquisition, in terms of cost benefit, the amount of time that teachers spend correcting and the amount of benefit that students gain from these corrections is rather small. So therefore, if we can automate and facilitate the provision of corrective feedback, let's say through a website, then perhaps teachers will give more of it and students will benefit from greater focus, greater frequency of corrective feedback, and perhaps greater consistency in the types of things that are attended to. So what I've done is since 2012, when the students went on strike, I've been working on this website called the Virtual Writing Tutor, which is a grammar checker I developed from languagetool.org, which is an open source grammar checker. And I've been writing rules for it specifically for my students ever since. So we're now 2015, and I launched it 2012, April the 5th. So in 3 years, I've written about 4,000 grammar or error detection rules. So it's getting quite good at picking up some common errors in students' text. But what I've noticed is that teachers are reluctant to use this website with their students simply because they are unable to control and to focus the feedback themselves. So what I did is I developed a website called correctivefeedback.com, and this is very recent. And the idea is that teachers would be able to use those error detection rules to search a student's text, identify the errors, and if they are, low priority or errors or perhaps false alarms, they would be able to, with a click of the mouse, hide those feedback messages, and also be able to do other operations that the computer can do very well and teachers do less quickly, and certainly take more time, and teachers might avoid because of the time involved. So for instance, to search text for academic words. If you want students to write academic text, well, you should be clear on what academic words are appearing in the text and what conversation words are appearing. Well, you can get a computer to search a text very quickly and identify those words. Also, for instance, if you are teaching academic text and you ask students to use transition words and phrases, well, you should know whether they've used them or not in their text. And so you can load these search tools into corrective feedback, into a grid, I call it a grid, and then say, tell the system to not only check grammar and check for academic and conversation words, but also check for target structures and see if they appear. And so with a click of a mouse, it will do all of these operations in sequence and generate literally pages and pages of feedback on student writing if you want it to, and then you can send it back to the student and have them work on that. Now, the idea is that feedback should no longer be so draining for teachers and so time-consuming. So they should be able to automate these very time-consuming activities and perhaps provide students with greater detail in their feedback that might be more useful. It is a work in progress, and we'll see how it is accepted by the ESL community.
Absolutely. And by the way, would you see a use of it outside of ESL, basically by those non-language teachers, teachers who teach something else, who would kind of familiarize themselves with those rules, or maybe provide some of that feedback?
Well, I'd love to know, and I invite all the teachers and advisors here to give it a try. It's correctivefeedback.com. As I said, I've been programming it to catch English second language errors. Of course, it'll catch other errors too. So I'm curious as to whether it would work. It's an open question. I frankly don't know.
Yeah, we can try that. Maybe we can do a kind of a little pilot project or something. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. Super. And I will support anybody willing to collaborate or to give it a try or share it with their teachers or make it available to their institution. I will do everything I can to make that possible.
Nice. Yep. Norm? You had to raise your hand.
We've lost him.
No, I'm sure he's there.
Hasn't lost me. I just oh, okay, I'm on. I do a lot of typing, so I keep my microphone off. What I wanted to say is that also at Vanier, this seems to be Vanier's day to shine. There's a biology teacher, I believe, Jason de Lima, who's actually Brazilian, but has been working with students in a program. I believe he's done it both ways, but what he's tried to do is find common meeting grounds between the sciences and the arts, largely through the use of writing and essays, and exploring perhaps commonalities of language skills between the sciences and the arts. And I think rather than there is certainly something to be said. I shouldn't say that this is a negative thing, that yes, absolutely, every discipline does have its own vocabulary and its own styles. And there's also a teacher whose name escapes me in the biology department at John Abbott College, who focuses very, very strongly on getting her students to write in a vocabulary and in a structure and in a language that is appropriate to biology. But I think it's also interesting to explore the fact that what we are seeing is that there is, as we've said, it's all about communication and about, if something about getting down to basics, where as ESL teachers, we're talking about simply getting people to communicate, but making sure that there are clear skills that all students develop, which unfortunately in certain subjects, I mean, let's be blunt here, there are certain subjects that would attract more visual learners, people who are less literate. And I mean, if you've taught lower level ESL courses, you do find that there are certain subjects that that are more represented in without naming any and making waves that are more represented in the lower levels. And frequently you discover not only are these people not good writers in English, but I was teaching in a French school, but that they're not good writers in French. And there's a certain, I think, as teachers who teach writing, I really do see that this 10% is important, not to hit students over the head with the fact that you have to write well and you have to write clearly, but to make it valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're taking a fine arts course, your language skills are not going to be called into play in most of the subjects that you have. However, when you get into the real world, as teachers, we owe it to our students to make sure that they can communicate effectively, if for no other reason, let's say taking the example of fine arts, to sell their work, to communicate, to submit portfolios and submit for grants. You need those language skills, and I think it's important that we don't eliminate them for certain students.
Absolutely. James?
I had my hand raised there for a second. I'd like to comment on a couple of things that have been said there. I think that Nick's piece about suggestion of getting students to write less academically sometimes as well is can be considered as a knee-jerk reaction, as in sacrilege. But there's another thing that something that I must throw out here is that when students have to write academically, they often don't have a relation to the topic. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm sure that I'm not the only person in the world who's obsessed with George Orwell, but some of my students were surprisingly enough not that obsessed with George Orwell. But get them to write about something that they found more interesting, such as a narrative or creative writing of their own. It unlocks not just their own abilities, but also their own interest, which then fed their abilities, which then, strange enough, fed their interest in writing academic English as well. It was very, very good. And to comment on what Norm said there as well, I must say that highlighting the importance of written communication, even in the perhaps less literature-heavy subjects, is again of great importance and great benefit to learners later on. There's a lot of interesting stuff being said here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Gabe?
Unmute. I thought I'd mention a couple of things. That is, one is that we have a ministerial obligation, at least at the English Cegeps is general education departments. They're umbrella competencies. So across English, French, humanities, phys ed, and the complementary courses, the mandate around written and oral communication is shared by all of these disciplines. So our college, within the institutional policy on evaluation of student achievement, or the IPESA, we have a 15% for specifically around language technicalities, as it were, but around language that is, I believe, both is a maximum. So it's explicitly stated that that's the expectation, is that 15% of an assignment will be around those skills and those competencies being demonstrated. At the same time, it's limited, as you had mentioned, Alex, so as to allow, I think, as many have mentioned, it's not the sole purpose, so that certainly conceptual understanding is primary, and research skills, et cetera, which may not come out in grammar. But it is something that, again, around the sort of overarching responsibilities, not just for students on graduation, but at graduation, they're expected to have these competencies. And so we, in our department, it's become more recently a concern around oral communication, which, while we all are, as humanities teachers, mark, as it's been described, we're marking all the time, the writing, that has taken such a weight, and really it is part of our responsibility as well to be building oral communication skills, which is a topic for a different day. And the other piece, it's nice to hear James talking about this. I've certainly, of the last 5 years, the News Activist platform came from a sense that getting a lot of writing out of students is really what I want, and having it be authentic. My sense is that the more authentic and engaged with the material, the more writing happens and the less word count becomes an issue. And so when I have students who have really been able to make their own path towards subject matter, it has allowed for much more substantial personality in the writing and a lot more concern about the technicalities. Because if a student feels that what they're writing is really meaningful, not just to them, but to a reader, it allows them to take much more responsibility and concern for how it is that their potential reader might take them seriously. And it's a very easy comment I've been able to make on student writing using News Activist, which allows students to have a visible audience. They know their audience is there. They're going to expect to get feedback from this audience. And if they have spelling errors in the title, very easy teaching point that this is something that's going to reduce the potential reach of your piece. You care about the piece, you want the audience to engage with it, you're going to have to start with those basic skills and make sure those are edited. And my marking rubrics have been skewed heavily towards that, just because I know that a lot of my students at Champlain write much more, can write much more effectively than they will demonstrate to me if the assignment is not something that is engaging enough, because it is we have 60% francophone or allophone students at Champlain.
Oh, really? Okay.
Only 40% otherwise. And what we see is oftentimes, what I see as a teacher is students will really pass in something where the content's very interesting, but the cleanup, the editing has been something they haven't put through enough time. And the way to manufacture that it's been easier for me to say, well, others beyond me will see this. And you will feel a little badly when you see the misspelled the or the lack of the capital letter, when you know it's not just your teacher, but your colleague or classmate. So I think it's interesting hearing how everyone is dealing with this, and how much in my particular college, the 15%, the weight on these things is really top down and ministerial. Maybe I'll stop speaking for now. I do want to perhaps share the screen and show how News Activist allows for students to get that concern that I want them to have about the authenticity of their writing.
Yeah, and actually to make the point clearly, explicitly, it's actually something I wrote about for ProfWeb recently, that we all know it's important to write to an audience, but something also that people have said very early on is that it's important for that audience to not be everyone in the world, because then it's very intimidating. So one neat thing about News Activists is that the audience is controlled, right? That you can write specifically for that one class. It can be made public afterwards, right? Can you just describe briefly the process, the kind of difference?
Yeah, sure. If that's okay, I don't. I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay, because it'll just be easier. I heard a weird sound just there. Did you get the? Okay.
Oh, that's the hand.
Oh, okay. So that wasn't so.
Or the chat. Yeah, it's chat.
Can you see my screen if I share it?
Yeah. Yep, it's good.
Okay, so if this is the front page that people are looking at, what you see here is all of the stories that students have shared. You'll see Marianopolis. The most recent story published today is by a student named Proud Lithuanian. So one of the things around that intimidation factor is the student here can choose to give themselves a name. Proud Lithuanian, I don't know who that is, and the student might know that people can read the psychology influence the media in ethically troubling ways, that everyone around the world can see that. At the same time, the author is Proud Lithuanian. The teacher of this course, Media Ethics, knows who that person is, but only the teacher might. So this allows this student, Proud Lithuanian, to submit this piece of writing, make it public without feeling as intimidated, and also knows I have an audience, someone, and if they care about this piece of writing, it allows them to share it publicly. So if I click on the story, you can see it here. And this was obviously an assignment the teacher gave to submit that has actual requirement for some nice referencing here. This looks like a pretty intense piece with a lot of references. I'm not logged into News Activist, so while I can read this, Proud Lithuanian, the user knows that, in fact, I can't comment on it. So while I, as an anonymous web browser, could stumble onto this piece and read it, I can't comment on it. I can't do anything with it. So the site, first of all, protects that, in fact, while the visibility is there, not anybody can just comment on this like an internet troll. If I log in as a user of the site, I could comment on this, but the student Proud Lithuanian has the control over who can see this. So there's multiple ways in which that privacy control is given. First of all, a teacher can add a class that's completely private. And that way the site ends up being like a nicely formatted forum for a class. But it's not that different than a forum, it's just nicely formatted. It allows, for example, rather than just writing on threads, I just clicked on the Proud Lithuanian profile page, as it were. And you can see that what this site does, even if this was a private class, this student, Proud Lithuanian, I hadn't planned this, so that name hopefully is acceptable to everybody, is you can see the student's class, the student's institution, and all of the pieces submitted, which has been 3. So this teacher is assigned submit 3 pieces here. And we can see that this one, Mayor of Saguenay, Lac-Saint Jean Tremblay, outbursts a call against Greenpeace. This one actually was written by a student in my class I see named Raya, and you can see Proud Lithuanian commented on this. So in terms of what James was talking about, and in terms of this idea of academic versus non-academic writing, what the site allows for is a certain intersection of these pieces. And that's what really, I think, gives it a unique place for students to both up their academic game while also being in an atmosphere that's engaging and gets them to want to write. That's the sort of balance that's meant to be built in here, is that while this is a conversation, Raya submitted this piece, Proud Lithuanian commented on it, said it's very interesting, it's encouraging to hear that news happens in Quebec but outside of the big cities. This is the student's natural voice, and at the same time, their basic English skills are being put to the test in terms of they know Raya here is going to get an email. Someone's commented on your piece. And so this little piece here, The Needs of Saguenay, Proud Lithuanian, the comment, the spelling in there is crucial. She's writing to Raya, who's her peer, who's a student at a different institution. And maybe she's been assigned to comment on work at the website, but she chose what to write on. So in terms of what James is describing, this teacher may say, go read anything at this website. Could be written anywhere around the world. We've got classes from all over, and make a comment and know that that student's going to read it. So if you look at the classes, on the classes page, we have all kinds of subjects, all kinds of institutions, and the student could be looking through this to find what they want to write about, what they want to comment on. At the home page, they can search by country, by category. If a student cares primarily about community building or civil rights, they could look by the most commented students about civil rights ever submitted and see what's there, and the student controls this entirely. And so they could say, oh, this is what I'm interested in, child marriage or danger behind a ritual. And it builds in this, as I say, the nexus of academic and non-academic writing, because if academic writing can't be connected to what students are doing with their writing offline, off campus, I think we're missing the boat, because it really is that students write a lot. They just don't necessarily do it in the atmosphere in which they're used to at the academic level. So by integrating the atmosphere of academic and non-academic, students know teachers are hovering in the background at this website. So their editing matters, but at the same time, they control what they choose to write about and when. And that when is key, because it allows the second language writer to spend 2 days on a comment, while someone in a humanities course might fire them off. But there's some control in that asynchronousness. So that's the basic piece. The last piece, and then I'll sign off on talking about this for the day, is just that, as Alex had asked, the privacy control is one where a teacher can say it's private to the whole class, or potentially the student can make one post public and another private. They control it, and the content is owned by the student, so they can choose how much it's visible. And the teacher and student together can get a lot of teaching moments out of that scaling up in terms of the publicity.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. And a point that you made, but I want to reiterate, because people don't always understand the value of this, is about synonyms, the use pseudonyms, the fact that it's proud to union instead of, whoever it is, I think it's pretty powerful. And people tend to forget that some students are really not keen into getting other students to learn their real names. The example I keep using, well, there's two. Some people are really paranoid as to sharing a name with a terrorist and then not being allowed to fly and things like that. So in places where students have some of those names, it can be pretty difficult. But one that I actually had several students who were trans, and it's been a thing that sometimes, just because Moodle shows the real names, they're outed. And you might think that it's a minor issue, but it's the kind of thing that we can at least discuss. So having something that is protective, even in terms of creating your own identity, I think it's part of it. It's not just writing, it's also the fact that your identity is behind it. So Nicholas, it's been a few minutes, but maybe you had raised your hand.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to mention something. Norm mentioned that there was a teacher who's trying to get students to write in the language of the field. Mm-hmm. Now, last year, I developed a website called fieldrelated.com. And the idea behind this website, Field Related, is to assist teachers in assessing whether a text is related to a particular field. Now, in ESL, we are asked to teach two courses, an A block course, which is a general course on the language, and a B block course, where the course is tailored to the field of study of the student or the program of the student. And so teachers are asked to evaluate texts to see if there is vocabulary from the field of study. Now, there are 80 or more programs, and sometimes we have students in a classroom that are just from all different programs. So how do we assess whether the vocabulary is related to their field or not? So what I did is on this website is I, as many fields as I could, I tried to collect glossary lists of words related to that field, load it into XML. And so when you submit a text to the website, it assesses or it counts the number of words related to each of the fields that are loaded into it, and then tells you which field it is most related to. Anyway, correctivefeedback.com can access this database, and so it's one of the features on the website. It's able to tell you how related to a particular field a text might happen to be. And I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, they're pretty useful. And I'm really impressed by the number of things you can do at the same time. I don't know how you find time, but that's another issue. Mary?
So I just wanted to follow up on a few of the things that have been said. It's one of the paradoxes of trying to get our students to write more, that a lot of the teachers in the specific disciplines like to assign that job to the teachers in the English department and in the Gen Ed courses, whereas at Cegep level anyways, we can assume that many of the students have gone into a particular program because they have an interest, might we even say a passion for that content. And so it's really the teachers in the discipline courses that hold the key to unlocking the students' desire to write and to express themselves and to share their thoughts. So I think that's a really interesting way that some committee like ours, like LCAD at Vanier, can gain access to the teachers in the different disciplines is by telling them that they're actually the ones that might hold the key to unlocking the desire of their students to write, as I said, and to express themselves through writing and sharing their ideas. So that's just an interesting paradox that's coming out of our discussions today.
Yeah, that we don't need to ask other to offshore the work or anything like that. We can do it within the discipline. And it's actually a discussion that happens also with ICT skills. Some people are saying, well, computer scientists might say, oh, send them to us and we'll teach them how to use technology. But at the same time, within the discipline, sometimes the use of technology is very specific, and it makes a lot more sense to ask accounting teachers to teach about use of accounting software than asking the computer science department to do so. Yeah. Roberta?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on a couple of points and bring in another aspect here. I just wanted to touch on, I think it was Gabe was talking about how the engagement was really important, and that really falls into one of the 3 principles of universal design for learning, which then sort of brings me to the fact of, I was noticing with news activists that using the asynchronous environment can, really be helpful, as mentioned, for students who are second language learners, but also for students who may have specific learning disabilities or learning differences that affect their writing abilities, such as dyslexia or dysorthographia. So having that asynchronous environment allows them to perhaps either do their writing using a specific piece of software, which they may normally be using, such as WordQ or Read and Write Gold or Kurzweil, any of those tools, then import it into their writing document, whether it be something like News Activist or into their writing assignment. But I would just like to also just bring up the fact of these other tools that support students' writing abilities, such as what I mentioned, WordQ, Read and Write Gold, Text Help, Kurzweil, as well as I just also like to mention in relation to Universal Design for Learning, and something that's being done at Dawson, more in their French department, where 2 teachers who have been really working with universal design are allowing all their students in their course to use Antidote. This might have been mentioned in the first lab, but use the writing tool Antidote and to work on their writing in French. But then that tool as well is a tool that supports their learning of the language, and it scaffolds it. Yeah, so just bringing in those points.
Absolutely, and I was actually getting into the grammar checkers. We had Stéphane Sinclair, who had created a grammar checker, and obviously Nick's tools include some of that. But I was wondering if Norm could add a few words about the use of grammar checkers, what you've noticed, including as an editor. I think it's also an interesting experience, if you don't mind.
Sure. You caught me a bit by surprise. I have to admit, and I used virtual writing tour, but a few years back, and as Nick said, it really, there's a grammar checker is an incredible incredible effort, because, as Nick has said, I don't know how many thousands of corrections he's put in, but there are so many cases that when one can put in, and it's. I have found, frankly, that Antidote is the best grammar checker there is. Now, maybe it's because my second language, French, is not the equal to my English. And I find that Antidote is an absolutely wonderful tool to use when I'm writing in French. Not so much because, well, yes, because if I don't get an error indicated in Antidote, I'm fairly certain, although it may not be brilliant writing, at least it's grammatically correct. And the other thing is that because I don't simply correct, I use it for the notes. I do find that I'm making fewer errors in my French writing as time goes on, because I have actually learned from Antidote a number of grammar things to do. That being said, I tested a number of grammar checkers, such as White Smoke, the virtual writing tutor. What I did is I created a sort of test paragraph en bon français, bourré de fautes, and ran it through with my rep TIC, Daniel Bourri at Cegep de Vieux-Montréal, a number of grammar checkers, and we actually did find that White Smoke produced the best results. And I'm sort of sad to say, although it was several years back, Virtual Writing Tutor did not win the race. But what happened was that we also found that Word has done a pretty good job these days of just simply the spell check of catching errors. The whole trick on getting students to do these things is, number one, you really do have to assign it. You have to say, I want to see your original writing. Fine, very good. I then want to see that you've run it through a grammar checker. And at the time I was using Virtual Writing Tutor. Send me the comments, and then I want to see how you've modified it. And as Nick has said, it's worth it in the sense that you've shown students what they can do. But at some point you have to say, I'm hoping that you're using it because the correction load is enormous. It all comes down to the correction load, that you've got massive amounts of corrections to do if you're going to insist on doing this. And I do believe that that grammar checkers are getting better. It's something that I've seen in the last couple of years. They are getting better and better and better. But truth be told, we're only, I think maybe because the antidote was such a labor of love for somebody, it has been the field leader. And we are catching up. But technically, it is a real challenge. And in the classroom, it's something, it's a skill that we really should give to students to use these things. And I think in English, I mean, the fact that Nick has these things is quite wonderful. What we really have to do as teachers is adopt them and get teachers to use them. And I think that really is the key.
Mhm.
Since you called on me, just on another topic, and motivating students to use grammar. I got students to post in News Activist. I then took the texts, my second language students, I took the texts out of News Activist, put the text into Net Quiz, made the corrections, sent these texts to everyone in the class, and had them choose the corrections. So in other words, they had a number of choices to make as to what was the correct grammar. All students had to take this quiz, and they got one quiz a week from student writing. The student who did the writing then had to make a presentation about what grammar errors they had made and explain why they did what they did, whether it was wrong, what rule they thought was involved, so that they actually had to take one sort of sample of their writing and analyze it in terms of its grammar. And I would hope, and that they got a significant grade for that. And I would hope that they learned something from it. I mean, I felt that it was an interesting way of getting them to focus on it, and having people also appreciate the choices that have to be made when you're writing, that each student had to face those same choices and go over them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and it provides a kind of a natural example instead of something that's contrived, right? I think it's pretty useful. Yeah. Avery, thanks for coming in. Maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit. And as you notice, we've been talking about grammar checkers, but also. Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me or no?
Yes.
Okay, good. I had some problems. I'm sorry. I had some problems with Cisco WebEx. I thought I had solved all these things, but I did not, so I apologize. Well, I think what I would talk about is kind of what what Norm was talking about, and it's the idea of adoption. I don't know much about grammar checkers other than Antidote and my experience with Antidote. I am not an expert in this like Nick is, who's been putting stuff out for a while and really pushing that forward. But I can talk about adoption because we have a language learning game that we made, and we sold it into all the English-speaking schools in Quebec. I don't know if you know that, Norm. I don't know if Norm heard that, but Norm helped a lot with that. And so we have a really big sale, and it's really exciting, and everyone's really excited. But now really comes a challenge, which is how do you get people to actually use it? So someone who is, and a lot of people thought this game was going to be amazing. Let's buy it. Let's put it into all these schools. Let's make a deal. And all that is great, but really it comes down to, can you get the teacher to use it? And there's a lot of different ways to go about that. One is to go through a department head and kind of have it, go top down. One is to go through the students and go bottom up. But really, your gatekeeper is your teacher. Not always, but frequently. And so what we are now doing is we are putting together the entire distribution plan, which is not just getting the app to the people, but it's getting the people to use it. And that is something that is a lot harder than it seems. I think that in terms of producing material, whether that's a product or a paper curriculum, whatever, it needs to be really good looking. I know it sounds stupid, but it does really need to be really good looking. It needs to be really easy to use. And then you need to have a lot of different ways to get that information to the teachers, the students, and the department heads and the administrators. So you can do something where you send it through social media, so YouTube videos on it. You can have an interactive tutorial built into it so everyone playing it can use it. One of the things that we're going to use a lot is the conseillers pédagogiques. So the conseillers pédagogiques are the what is that? The advisors, the pedagogical advisors, and they're hired by Quebec, and so everyone puts them into. There's a bunch of them, and they go from school to school and kind of let people know what's going on and what are the best practices. So all of those things are not just important, but they are probably primordial to getting your tool used, liked, so that you can then move on to other places and say, I want to sell in other places. If you don't have a strategy for getting teachers to use it, for getting students to fall in love with it, and getting or getting department heads and administrators to fall in love with it, you're not going to get the usage that you need, even if it's a great tool. So it's just can be a tough sell, and we're all in this together, so let's help each other. And I'm willing to help anyone out there, and I'm willing to help anyone out there doing anything, and I'd love for people to be willing to help us out. So get in touch.
Yeah, and I think some of the lab's effects will be about collaboration. I'm hoping that. Gabe, you can say a few words.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting stuff, Avery. As an incidental developer of such a tool, I'm what's been lucky for the development of the community of teachers and students using News Activist right now is that it was very organic, and because it serves a purpose, it's been about early adopters as teachers who are already engaged in a certain kind of teaching, and we're looking for a certain kind of cross-campus collaborative platform, and stumbling into News Activist as Norm originally did, because he was running a collaborative course across 3 campuses and looking for a way to have asynchronous writing take place. And it turns out it's just not that easy. And so that's how Norm and I originally met. And thus far, it's been that same manner of early adopters, of teachers with the right curriculum, for whom it's very easy to integrate this particular platform. And I think maybe one piece to add into that, what Avery was describing, is what I'm learning more and more is how certain teachers need no help at all, because the curriculum and the point of the tool is so obvious given what they're already doing that they can step right into it with no support. On the other hand, it's about introducing other teachers who may have no experience with these kinds of possibilities, who need a lot more hand-holding, and in fact, it's a completely different workflow in terms of getting that kind of person interested in using a new kind of technology. Because, as you've described, if it's difficult and you don't know exactly why you would use it, what's the point of going into the process of learning how to use it? So it's interesting thinking of different, as years go by, how different teachers and students arrive. I wanted to mention quickly that what Roberta described about students with certain specific needs who may find asynchronous writing to be a useful thing. What's really fascinating in doing some sort of analysis of why students or which students like using News Activist as a platform, there's a kind of student who, for lack of a better word, is shy. So really may like to do this asynchronous writing where they like peer collaboration, they like to write, and they would write. But when in a classroom where the main form of communication is raise your hand and speak to this question, there's can be some disenfranchised students, maybe up to 40%, who say, well, if that was asked in a way where we could write about it in a different style, I'd get involved and be part of this discussion. And so I think one of the interesting things to think about is how that, back to the beginning of this discussion about writing versus oral communication, that there are these things sort of come together and students learn differently and can be engaged differently in material. So I think it's interesting thinking about how the shy student can get engaged to write and can perhaps step up their actual game when in writing in a place where that's a strength, that what they do is behind a pseudonym and they write and they know how to do that professionally and academically in an impressive manner, that sometimes that student can get through college never having had the opportunity to exercise and show that side because there's a lot of pressure put on in real time communication, and maybe that's not where they shine. So I think it's interesting to think about how these tools together make that kind of place where if we do all share, if Avery, and I'd like to ask Avery what tool it is. Is it Antidote that he's related to? Is Antidote Avery's tool? Yeah.
No, we make a speaking game. It's a negotiation game where you talk with a partner out loud, synchronously. It's used in tablet classrooms. It's used with audio chat. So it's really to help students learn how to develop oral interaction skills, so talking face to face or on the telephone. And so we sold it to a distributor who's putting it in all the English schools. And then we have a distribution plan for the rest of Canada and the United States and beyond. But it's very obvious why you would use it, but that doesn't mean that people will use it, right? It's very hard to get tools.
What's the name of it?
It's really hard to get tools. Oh, it's called Ready to Negotiate. It's
coming
out in September.
Negotiate. Great.
Yeah, it's coming out in September. It's going to be an iOS app, and then it'll be an Android app, and then it will be a desktop and a language lab tool that will be hopefully a lot of places. But that depends on how good we are at getting people to fall in love with it quickly, to understand why it's important, and then to make it really easy to use so that if they are tempted to kind of open it up and check it out, that it's really the onboarding process is like, the easiest thing they've ever had to do. And that's not easy to do. Really good video games do this very well, but these are people who have, decades of experience, lots of cash at their availability, and we're just trying to be as good as we can with our little company and see if we can't make people think that we're really a big company. So that's what it is. So we're really in that phase of getting people to adopt, and I know that there's great tools out there, and I know that there's great stuff for teachers out there, but having it be out there and having a teacher use it is really two different things, and that's what I think we're all trying to work on, and we're all trying to fix, and let's do it together.
And on that note, I'm going to have to sign off. Alex has done a great job, as always, in sort of, I think, learning about each other is great. And I hope to hear from people, and people can go to that. News Activist is our tool that we're, giving out and passing around. So people are welcome to sign up there. But thanks to everybody and to Alexander for moderating this. It's been really interesting hearing all the different perspectives. And I'm sorry that I have to run, but
hello.
That's the story.
Talk about intimidation.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Hello. Yeah. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for your help. And since we're talking about adoption and so on, I really care about technological appropriation. I tend to say it's my main thing. So I was wondering, Nick, since you create so many tools and you have so much experience in getting people to use them, if you have some words to say about that.
You know, I wish I had answers. I'm listening to Avery and just agreeing with every word he says. We work so hard to try to make something useful that we believe in, and then to get teachers to implement it is actually very difficult. Teachers spend a lot of time preparing and grading, and our workload is tremendous. To ask teachers to destabilize a formula that has been working, I mean, in their mind it's working, it's manageable for them, and to introduce something new and perhaps unmanageable that may just completely flop. I mean, this is their fear, is very difficult. And I mean, you see with Norm, he tried the virtual writing tutor a while ago, and it wasn't successful at detecting the errors that he was looking for. And so there's also a kind of timing that happens. We want people to know about it and to try it and to support it and to, alert us when it works and when it doesn't work. And if we are unable to get traction, in the short time they give us to try the software, then we find ourselves having, perhaps alienating somebody or having to wait a couple of years before they're willing to try it again. It's a challenge for all of us, and I wish Avery luck, and I'll do what I can to promote his product.
Absolutely, Avery. A little bit more to expand on this, including about the challenge of being both a teacher and a developer.
Yes, I was just signing up for news activist. That's why I was a little slow to the gun here. Okay. It's I think something that takes adoption takes a lot of skills that I did not have at the beginning. I tried selling this game for 3 years, and probably longer, really, if I really want to be honest with myself. At the beginning, I had an idea on paper, and I put that into the classrooms, and that worked really well. And I thought, oh, well, this is going to be easy. And then as I went forward, I started getting better at writing business plans and trying to win competitions to win money. And then I started meeting more people, and then I realized the importance of graphics and how important art was. And then I learned how important game design and user experience, UX was, and all of those things really took me a long time because I had to kind of learn them on my own. When I would present something that wasn't beautiful, people wouldn't be into it. And then when I would present something that was maybe beautiful, kind of cool looking, but not like perfectly clear, they weren't into it. So it really was a long process of going through that, and it really took a lot of different people. And now I'm a co-founder at a serious game studio here in Montreal. So all of that process, it's like going to school. Unfortunately, it took me a lot longer than going to school. I wish it would have been just a 6-month, program, like a little certificate, but it turned out to be like my doctorate, which I don't have a PhD for. So in the end, what we end up having now is a game that's actually pretty good looking, pretty easy to use, really obvious why you would need it. Working on speaking, face to face and on the telephone is something that it's hard to work on as teachers, so a digital solution is really good. And now we're going to see, how good looking can we get it? How easy to use can we get it? How can we sell this to people so that they understand the idea very, very quickly? And we're going to see, if we do a great job of it, I bet we do really well. And if we don't do a good job of it, I bet we don't do it very well. So it's going to come down to us doing that. And it's, something that I see in a lot of the products that we're putting out there. I mean, I read a great article on, I think it was TechCrunch, about 3 tech companies that failed, and they were really struggling with a business model. Do we give it away? Do we sell it? And really what they're saying is what is my value proposition and who am I proposing that to? Is it to the teacher? Is it to the student? Is it to the administrator? Is it to the department head, parent? And all of those are different value propositions, and you have to really get them all right in one product. And it ain't easy. Let's just say that, as clearly as possible, it ain't easy.
And what's interesting is that there are incubators specialized in helping startups to really figure those things out, like what's your minimal viable product and things like that, and including what's the value proposition. But it's really in your case, it's really about the learning first, and then into the product that it's not the startup before the horses kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, right. It's then you have to learn all about startups and what is an MVP and why do you do an MVP and how do you kind of grow and how do you get enough cash to make sure that your product gets to the next level. I mean, it's really like a puzzle in 3 or 4 dimensions with sounds and visuals and just trying to put it all together, and you're like, I've never seen a puzzle this complicated before, and I got to try to put this thing together. So it's been a huge learning experience for me. It's been very fun, but I wouldn't mind making a product that really was useful as opposed to just kind of working hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of it is about helping one another in terms of those projects. Like when you're on your own, it's very difficult, but it's somewhat easier when people can collaborate. At least I think so. Norm?
Sorry. Okay, so I'm on. I've been working recently on an article that I'm going to submit to Pédagogie collégiale, and it's essentially a reaction piece. In this current issue, they did an article, L'enseignement explicite, peut-il convenir au collégial, and which discusses more or less an approach to learning called direct instruction. It's without going into it, I mean, really, the part that I find so interesting about the fact that Avery has been speaking, the fact that Gabe has been speaking, is that we started, and I'm sure everyone here has heard the old saw about we're going to have a paradigm change where you're not the sage on the stage, you're the guide on the side. And if we look at the most recent information, I forget the report that comes out about trends in IT. Do you remember what it is, Alex? The Horizon Report. Yes. The Horizon Report. It seems that more and more now there's a trend where students are expecting their teachers to, although they're supposed to be the guide on the side, they're supposed to suggest the technology that they're supposed to use for the student to do their own exploration or their own adoption of the information that the teacher is presenting. And I think this is almost another more advanced step that more and more teachers are finding it, I won't say necessary, but perhaps convenient to, in recommending technology for their students to use, they're actually developing the technology. I mean, if we're looking at people like Gabe and Avery, and more, we're actually seeing the development of a teacher software developer. And this is something you didn't see. I mean, there's Modap Key, I forget, there on the French side. There's quite a few teachers that have developed their own technology, and it's a trend that is happening more and more.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Roberta?
Yes, I just wanted to bring something else also into the discussion. I know we've been talking about a number of different tools that have been developed. And if we're looking at the diverse range of students in a classroom, some students may be accessing this technology using screen readers or other types of tools. And I just wanted to mention this whole idea of the actual accessibility and usability of these tools by the technology that students are using. So whether it's screen readers, different platforms, like just curious whether these different websites and tools are tested with the different types of technology. I just wanted to bring that into the discussion and mention it.
And have you found some tools that are pretty accessible? You were mentioning the standards themselves.
Yeah, there's worldwide standards. And actually, like in Ontario, they actually now have a law, accessibility for Ontarians with disabilities. And the worldwide standards are WCAG 2.2.0. I think some of the major tools out there are accessible. But I mean, I haven't tested a lot of them, and I'm just wanted to bring it into the discussion, for people's reference, just to think about if they're maybe expecting a wide range of students in their class to be using a particular tool, whether it's either compatible with their specific assistive technology.
Yeah, sounds good. And by the way, I've been posting a few links on the chat, and part of it is because then we can keep it in document and things like that. But maybe James, you could say a few words because you posted on the chat about funding, and since you work for a pretty elaborate organization, I think it's useful.
Thank you, Alex. When it comes to funding, I must say that we don't have such a big problem with that being quite established. But when it comes to getting our message out there, something I do find is still difficult even now. And Udakun is a product that is known all around the world. And even though we all understand that our product saves teachers a lot of time when it comes to looking at essays and marking essays, still we have problems with clients who will buy a license with us and have difficulties having their teachers even use the product that they have bought, simply because teachers, like most people, can sometimes be reluctant to try new things, especially if there is any sort of learning curve, even though that we and the people and their bosses are convinced that this is a good thing for them to have. It is something that eventually will trickle down. It is easier if there is someone who has a burning passion for what you're trying to offer in the organization, and eventually it will be picked up and taken on by the rest of the people. But it's something that we still battle with constantly within pedagogical products. Sorry.
No, don't be. It's quite interesting, and it sounds to me like much of it has to do with roles. That we take the role of teaching as teachers, and then we don't want others to take that role, right? There might be something like that going on. Yeah, Avery?
Can I chime in on that? Yes. So one of the big lessons that we learned, and we learned the hard way, of course, is that when you were selling a product, if you didn't go to a or the decision maker, you were really going to spin your wheels in the sense that even if someone liked it lower down in an organization, whether they were, a teacher or a department head or they were an administrator, if you didn't get to the top person who could make this decision, you were going to spend a lot of time in meetings and in conversations about, I like this, and that, and this, but you weren't going to get a deal. Once we went and found the top person in the distributor, in the company that we're using as a distributor, and we found that person, we got that hook. Everything happened actually relatively quickly. This person said, I get it. I love it. Let's do this. And then everyone else fell into line after that, which was something that we had heard, but you hear things and you think, well, I still have to keep trying all these other routes. And it really turned out to be the case that this was the way to go. Now, maybe that was just this one case, and maybe there's plenty of other examples where you could start low and go high. That's fine, but for us, when we were trying to sell this thing, it really worked when we went to the top and found that person who said yes, and then, as I said, everything else fell into place afterwards. If I can add one more thing, a little bit about what everyone's talking about, how hard it is to get these things adopted, and the entire process of doing that. And the teacher, as the software developer, engineer, or project manager, I think that there's something interesting about what's going on in this field, because I think it's when you get into teaching, or at least for me, I got into teaching because it was a vocation. It really felt like a mission for me to do this kind of work. It might sound cheesy, it might sound dumb, and I wouldn't disagree with you if you said that, but it really has always felt that way about that with me. I think if you're getting into educational technology, it's probably somewhat similar to that because there's so many roadblocks, and it's so not for everyone, but for us, it's been so hard that if you don't really deep down inside believe it, if you're really looking just to make money, you're going to probably stop after a little bit because you're going to say, this is crazy. Why would I ever dedicate my 70 hours a week or more to this? Why won't I just go and get a regular job and just get my cash and be fine? I think that there is, for a lot of teachers, a belief that there's a way that we can help even more, that I can be even more useful, and that's by doing this, and that's what, for me at least, has gotten me through a lot of this stuff, because honestly, no rational person would do what I did. It makes no sense, and I look back on it, I think, I can't believe I toughed it out for this long. I should have easily given up 1,000 times. So I'm glad that we're all here and talking, and I like being around all of you, and let's keep talking, and let's see if we can't figure out a way to do this all together.
Absolutely. And there's 5 minutes left, so I think it's a good time to wrap up. And so some last thoughts that you might have, and I'll this time I'll start from the end, if you don't mind, Wilma. So basically, some parting thoughts about either the tools we can use to improve our own writing, or to help students in some ways, or anything else you might want to share. So Wilma?
Yes, hello. I've really enjoyed the discussion. I like that there are many computer software tools that are out there. I think this will help to make our jobs easier. The other thing is, and I think this is certainly the group that's here today, is that if we have a clear message that we are all sending to our students, that language is important, communication is important, whether you're speaking, reading, writing, listening. And I think what we have is like-minded people trying to help our students at the high school level, at the college level, at the university level, to continue to communicate clearly with others. Also, the fact of who is your audience, the fact of authentic writing that will help our students write from their perspective, maybe on a more personal level, really helps. And for them to know that other people will be seeing this, not just the teacher. Those are huge things to help us move in this direction. But wonderful to see and hear that many organizations and individuals are very concerned with this and need to be, and we as collective institutions need also to be. So let's move forward. Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Tim?
Yeah, just to echo what Wilma said, I think it's so important to be on the same page when communicating this message. I think also, I love that we have a whiteboard full of all these technologies, and I think a huge part of that is modeling the use of them. So, you could send your classroom of students, here's a list of different ideas, this will help your grammar, they're all fantastic. The student might click the first one, and it might be a hit or not, but you could, lose them if it's not working. So I think, at least at Vanier, the classrooms are all wired with a projector and a computer. So just showing students, taking 5 minutes out of the actual, let's say, active lecturing or teaching time or whatever's going on, but just to show how, it could be your favorite or it could be one that you feel applies to this particular context, but showing how it's used and explaining, like Norm was saying, he uses antidote. I think telling your students that, it humanizes you and it shows that it's a lifelong process. It's not just that when I'm in the classroom, I need to be, conscious of my grammar, but once I have my diploma, no problem. So really just, expressing that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Roberta?
Yes, hi. Yeah, I would like to say I also really enjoyed the discussion, and also especially the part about the adoption of the tools by teachers. And also would like to reiterate a bit of what Tim was saying in regards to just making sure that the technology that teachers are proposing and suggesting is the right match for the students, and what they're going to use, and that it may not be, one size fits all. So you might have, students in your class using many different types of technology. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Norm?
Sorry.
That's okay.
All right. So can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Final thought. I just come back to the points I made. I'm really excited, because I'm not teaching now, and I'm just really excited by seeing, as Avery said, how many teachers have really gotten hooked by the potential of information technology. And it's not the information technology itself, which is fairly addictive, but what it can do. And that, we're really in at a stage now where we're equipping the students to learn in a way that best suits them, and that learning itself has become so much more of a mature enterprise, where we're not just sort of sitting there and saying, okay, this is what you've got to learn, that's it. What we're saying to students is explore this, see what you can get out of it. There's a whole amazing world out there. Find a solution that works for you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Nick?
Yeah, so just to echo what Norm was saying, I think he's absolutely right. What we need to be doing is to encourage students not to look to technology for a perfect fix to their writing or a perfect opportunity to find information or to do the research for them, but rather to encourage teachers and students to be wise consumers of technology, to understand its limitations, and to understand that if a machine identifies an error or provides you with a link or a piece of information, to think about it and not to adopt it wholesale. Students, and I think teachers also, have a lot of fear around the use of technology, and what we need to encourage is for people to be careful in their consumption, but to get over their fear and just to understand what benefit it can bring without expecting perhaps perfection from the get-go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mary?
I just want to say thank you to everybody. As a teacher, I have to admit to all of you that I've never heard of any of these resources that we've talked about at these sessions. Good. So that I think that's important information to know, that sort of a regular guy teacher like me doesn't have a way really of accessing these types of tools and to find out the names. I've written down a whole big long list, and I'm going to have a very busy weekend looking at them all. So that's very exciting for me. And I just have really, really enjoyed these sessions. And I think that what we've been talking about is super important in terms of supporting all kinds of different students and supporting all kinds of different teachers in all kinds of different ways.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. James?
Well, I'd like to echo the thanks for organising this, Alex. It's very much appreciated. I'd also like to echo what Nick said at the very beginning. If anyone would like to try Urdukin plagiarism detection, you are more than welcome to contact me, and I can arrange a test account. You can see what it's like in a live situation with the class. That's urdukin.com. You can catch me there. Sorry, I put in a bit of sales thing. Got to throw it in there, justify my time.
No, I think it's pretty clear that it's not about sales. It's more about knowing what's out there and that we can collaborate, that we can have projects that include those tools. I think it's pretty clear. If it's not, I want to put it out there for the record that it's not about pushing tools. It's about there are tools that might be useful and we're exploring them. And it was a very good point to make about the teacher using it in the classroom and saying, well, I'm using this and maybe you would like to use it as well. I think it's pretty powerful as a message. Yeah. Avery?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry I was late. I thought I was better at technology than I actually am. And I'm just super excited for everything that's coming our way in terms of new tools, new ways to learn, new ways to teach. And I'm excited to be a part of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing everything that everyone does and being of help in any way, shape, or form. Get in touch with me on LinkedIn, send me an email, anything I can do for anyone. I would love to help out. So just contact me.
Nice. And Gabe, for basically the last word. Because I know
it's the last word, and I'll go full inspirational. Maybe one thing that we haven't directly addressed, and is where this happened to me, is that we as teachers are in a zeitgeist where this technology is happening around us, and what happened for me to get involved in developing a site had to do with the potential that's sitting there in front of me for my students. I see them thinking, there seems to be more that we could be doing. And the idea that we're in a moment where as teachers we have that opportunity, both with tools that exist and then the kind of thing I've done in developing a tool, it's really just taking advantage of looking at a class full of students who since the last 10, 15 years are growing up in a world where the kinds of possibilities are so huge. And it's the work you're doing, Alexander, and everybody here to try and harness that and bring it into the classroom, which is really, there are challenges and there's work that comes from that, but the potential for the kinds of teaching we can do is really huge. So it's great to see how many people from different walks are participating in that. And I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations with individuals as they see fit. But it is a lot of fun wondering how our classrooms are going to look over the next few years, given the possibilities.
Yeah, I think changes are afoot. Part of La Vitrine's mission is to look at emerging technologies and what they change in terms of their pedagogical implications. It's not about pushing tools, or even much of it is about being critical about technology. A few of the things that we talked about was about the role of computer as compared to the role of a teacher. And I think that message is an important one to carry, that teachers still have a role, obviously, I hope it's obvious, but that sometimes we can be helped by some tools. So thank you everyone for coming, and the video from this third and last session will be up very shortly, because there weren't technical issues so much on my part, so I won't have to edit it. But the first one, I still have to edit it. There's been a number of issues, including I tried recording it. I think some parts were still not available for whatever reason, but it's like that. It happens like that. The content was pretty useful. Norm has been so graciously providing some notes. I hope other people will be able to provide some notes. That would be wonderful. I won't force anyone, but since it's about writing, I always like when different writers have their voice in. So I'll post those links for the videos from the three sessions. And if you're able to do a write-up of any kind, we can put it on our site on vteducation.org for everyone to see if you want, so that we can have a variety of voices. We really care about polyvocality. So thank you very much, and I'll keep you posted as to other labs that might be interesting in the future. But this one has been going pretty well in my sense. I'm very glad that people have been able to come in. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.